let's just jump right in. From the second our alarm goes off in the morning to when we're scrolling before bed, our lives are just completely wrapped up in technology. It's our office, it's where we hang out with friends, it's our library, it's everything. But have you ever stopped to think about how this constant connection is actually shaping us? How it's changing the way we work, how we connect with people, and even how our own minds work? Well, today we're going to pull back that curtain and really look at our digital lives.
So, to really get a sense of just how big this is, take a look at this number. Any guesses? This is the average time a person spends on digital devices every single day. More than 6 hours. That is a huge chunk of our waking life spent staring at a screen. And a reality like that, well, it has some pretty profound consequences for all of us.
All right, so here's the game plan for this explainer. First, we'll unpack this new world of the unplugged office. Then we're going to explore our two different social lives, online versus offline. After that, we'll dig into what we're calling the mind's new noise and the psychological price of being always on. And finally, we'll get into the good stuff, some real, concrete ways we can start taking back our attention. Okay, first up, the world of work. The pandemic didn't just send us home to work in our pajamas, right? It totally rewired our entire relationship with our jobs. It was like hitting the fast forward button on a shift that was already happening, and in the process, it's changing the very definition of what a workplace even is. For years, all we ever heard about was work-life balance. It was this holy grail, this idea that you could, build a neat little wall between your work self and your home self. But now that the office is in our living rooms and our kitchen tables, well, that wall has pretty much crumbled into dust. So now we're talking about something totally different, work-life flow. So what is work-life flow really? It basically starts by just accepting the new reality. Our personal lives and our work lives are constantly bleeding into each other. So instead of fighting to keep them separate, the focus shifts to integrating them. How can we make these two parts of our life flow together, harmoniously, instead of constantly being at war with each other? And this really shows you the two sides of the coin when it comes to remote work. On the one hand, the benefits are amazing. We're sleeping more, we're less stressed, we're not dealing with a daily commute or catching every office colds. But there's a flip side. It's taking a physical toll, more back pain, more eye strain, and psychologically, we're fighting these new battles like techno stress and just that absolute exhaustion you feel after being on video calls all day. It really shows us this whole revolution isn't some simple utopia, it's a complicated trade-off we're all still figuring out.
Now, this blurring of lines goes way beyond our jobs. It's happening in our social lives, too. We're supposedly more connected than we have ever been, right? Friends, followers, they're all just a click away. But if that's true, why do so many of our online interactions feel kind of empty sometimes? Why do they just feel so fundamentally different from actually talking to someone face to face?
Well, researchers have pointed to 4 big structural differences that just change the whole game. We lose out on all those nonverbal cues, we can hide behind a screen with more anonymity, we build friendships in totally new ways, and, of course, information spreads like wildfire. Each one of these things completely changes how we relate to each other. But out of all of those, the most massive, most profound one is probably the loss of nonverbal cues. Think about it. So much of how we communicate, sarcasm, empathy, excitement, it's not in what we say, but in the how, the tone of our voice, a facial expression, a simple gesture. When you strip all of that away and you're just left with black and white text on a screen, the meaning can get completely lost in translation. And the cost of that is pretty startling. This quote comes from a recent study, and it suggests that just by reading someone's words instead of hearing their voice, we can actually perceive them as less human, less thoughtful, less emotional. It's this subtle form of dehumanization that's happening in our text messages and social media feeds every single day, and it leads to so much misunderstanding and a real loss of connection.
And here's the kicker. Even when we are physically together, technology can still drive a wedge between us. We've all been there, right? You're in the middle of a story, and the person you're talking to just glances down at their phone. That little act, it now has a name: phubbing. And it's not just rude. Studies show it creates real feelings of being excluded, and it can seriously damage the quality of our real-world relationships. And where do we go when we feel disconnected? Back to our phones. It's a really vicious cycle.
So all this constant switching between online and offline, between our work self and our personal self, it creates this kind of permanent low-level background noise in our minds.
Let's take a look at the actual psychological price we're paying for being always on. So why is it so hard to just put the phone down? It's not about a lack of willpower, it's about brain chemistry. Every notification, every comment, it gives our brain a tiny little hit of dopamine. That's the same chemical involved in pleasure and reward. Social media apps are literally designed like slot machines to give us these unpredictable rewards, creating this powerful feedback loop that trains our brains to compulsively check our devices over and over again.
And every single time we give in to that urge to check, we pay a cognitive price. It's called the switching cost. Even a super quick glance at a notification completely shatters our concentration, and it takes a surprising amount of mental energy to get back into that state of deep focus. All these little micro interruptions all day long, they just fragment our attention, they tank our productivity, and they make deep creative thinking almost impossible.
In the most extreme cases, the stress of this hyper-connected and yet sometimes deeply isolating world can have absolutely devastating consequences. During the pandemic lockdowns, when you had forced proximity combined with all this economic and psychological stress, countries all over the world reported a horrifying spike in domestic violence calls. It's just a stark, tragic reminder that for many people, home is not a safe place, and technology can't fix these deep, systemic social problems.
And it's so important to remember that these psychological burdens, they are not felt equally across the board. Research has clearly identified specific groups who are way more vulnerable to the mental health impact of our digital world. We're talking about frontline healthcare workers, elderly people facing isolation, kids and college students trying to navigate it all, and those who are already dealing with economic hardship or psychiatric conditions. A one-size-fits-all approach to well-being just doesn't cut it.
Okay, so we've kind of diagnosed the problem from a few different angles. But what's the solution? Is it all doom and gloom? No. The good news is we are not powerless here. We can absolutely make conscious choices to build a healthier, more intentional relationship with our technology. Let's talk about how.
This really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And look, it's not about throwing your phone in the river and moving to a cabin in the woods, unless that's your thing. It's about moving from a state of just constantly reacting to dings and notifications to a place of proactive, intentional use. It's about us deciding what we want from our tools, instead of letting our tools decide for us.
One amazing place to start is with a technique designed to fight that switching cost we just talked about. It's called the Pomodoro method, and it's super simple. You just pick one task, you set a timer for 25 minutes, and for those 25 minutes, you work on that one thing without any interruptions. No email, no social media, nothing. Then you take a 5-minute break. It's like a workout for your focus muscle, retraining your brain to concentrate for longer periods. It's a game changer. And there are so many other things you can do right now. Honestly, the single most powerful one, turn off almost all of your notifications. Just be ruthless about it. If it's not from a human being who needs you urgently, it can probably wait. Schedule specific, limited times to check social media instead of letting it interrupt you all day. Create no phone zones, like the dinner table, or no phone times, like the first hour of the day. It is all about creating those intentional boundaries for yourself. And all of this leads us to what might be the ultimate question for our future. As artificial intelligence gets smarter and more woven into the fabric of our lives, who is really making the choices? In this new digital world, thinking about our own agency, our own control, it's not just some philosophical thought experiment anymore. It's absolutely essential.